Thanks again for joining, everyone. Here's Josie.
Okay, hey everybody. Hopefully you can see my screen okay. Thanks for joining us before our 3-day weekend. Today is our community of practice. It's a bi-monthly thing the Transfer and Articulation Committee puts on. Oops, I had a timer to make sure I didn't spend more than 5 minutes talking. It's something our committee puts on so that we can share information and talk about relevant topics to transfer and articulation. So this month, our presentation is about military credit. So we have a guest presenter here today. Before I hand it over to her, I've just got some quick things to get us started. First of all, just a housekeeping thing is that if any of you guys, when you are signing into these meetings, you notice that your login information doesn't appear correctly, perhaps you're under the name of somebody else. We kindly ask that you take a moment after this potentially to go to our AACRAO Transfer and Articulation webinar website and register for the Community of Practice webinars. Delete your old calendar event and add the new one, because most likely what's happened is potentially someone forwarded you their invite, and so that's why you're showing up under someone else's name. So just a quick housekeeping thing about that. As I said, we are going to be talking about military credit today, which falls under the category of credit for prior learning. So I had some quick videos to just explain the difference about CPL. Probably just about anybody here it already is aware of the concept of CPL, but since it is Friday, here's some quick laughs for all of us. Hopefully you can hear this okay.
Josie, you might need to, when you share, there's like a little button at the bottom that says optimize share for video and then share sound. So you might need to stop sharing really quick and then reshare, but before it selects which screen you want to put up, just check those two boxes at the bottom.
Oh, I see. Okay. Sorry, guys.
No worries.
Okay, let's try that again.
Tamagotchi in 1998.
No experience in the field of biology.
I have plenty of experience in biology. I bought a Tamagotchi in 1998, and it's still alive. Let's do this.
So what CPL isn't, which is having very little information and using small prior experiences to claim knowledge. And then what CPL is.
The answer is -8 pi alpha.
Hang on a second. That's not our answer. What are you doing?
Answering question, winning physics bowl.
How do you know anything about physics?
Here I am janitor in former Soviet Union. I am physicist. Leningrad Polytechnica. Go polar bears.
Then you've never worked in a lab.
The answer is -8.
When I practice this, I could get to there we go. Okay, sorry about that. So just a quick thing about military credit and credit for prior learning to get this topic started. So many people, if you're on this call, you've probably already read the PLA boost that was released a couple years back. It's got great information, if you haven't read it, about the importance of credit for prior learning in higher education, particularly for adult students. Just some quick facts to support the topic we're discussing today is that PLA, through the report that the PLA boost covered when they looked at several universities across the country, the take-up rate, and that's to refer to the use of PLA, the people that took advantage of opportunities to earn credit for prior learning. The take-up rate for PLA is much higher among military civilians than it is, or military personnel compared to civilians. 43% of military personnel will took advantage of credit for prior learning, compared to just 3% of civilians. So there's a high potential for why military credit is important. It's got a high reach. It's also linked to higher completion rates among military personnel. Among military personnel in the study that earned credit for prior learning, oh, I'm sorry. I saw my Zoom disappear. Their credential completion was 35% compared to 21%. And lastly, just an interesting fact is that ACE recommendations have historically played a large part in the credit for prior learning that's been awarded. 90% of credit awarded came from ACE recommendations. So at that, I'm going to stop talking and hand this over to our speaker for today and expert, Audrey Smith, Associate Director of Office of Articulation and Transfer Systems from Eastern Kentucky University. Audrey, it's all yours.
Thanks, Josie. Thank you, everybody, for allowing me to be here today and present. I'm really excited to get this going. And sorry, I should have got my presentation started before I shared. But I'm really excited to present to you all today. And I don't know that I'm much of an expert, but I appreciate that. Anyway, so we'll just get into it. So as Josie said, my name is Audrey Smith. I'm the Associate Director in the Office of Articulation and Transfer Systems at EKU, or Eastern Kentucky University. We're located in Richmond, Kentucky, and if you're familiar with Lexington, we're just down the interstate from Lexington, about 30 minutes or so, 45 minutes, so not too far from there. So I want to give you a little bit of my background from me, my experiences with transfer and military credit. I started, after my undergrad, I started at EKU in the registrar's office, and I was in academic history, and I was there for 7.5 years. So I have an experience with transcript recording and all things academic history. And then I changed positions. I wanted to get into some advising, and I went to transfer recruitment. And our recruitment model is we do some advising as well. For transfer students, I should say. Then from there, I moved into my position that I'm in now, which is basically back-end support for transfer students. And we also serve other students. We serve adults, readmitted students, returning students, visiting non-degree. Really, we do a lot of support for all students, but a large focus is transfer. And I am back in the transcript recording world. We actually do some transcript recording, and then of course course articulation. And then with all of that, in my years in registrar and here, I definitely have a hand with military credit. And as I'm going to talk about now, today we're kind of looking at our processes again. We have a really great process. But as I'll discuss through various things like personnel changes and undocumented processes, some things get lost. So we're going to go through that today. But unlocking opportunities, enhancing military credit recognition at Eastern Kentucky University. So, okay, so starting with a history of where we started at EKU with military credit, and then kind of going into where we are today. It was a long-standing practice that we would review JSTs and give students free elective credit. So they weren't going towards any of their degree requirements, but we were giving them the credit hours that were on the JST. And so those were being used for their graduation requirements and getting those hours completed. They just weren't being applied directly to any major supporting requirements. Kind of moving forward, in early 2010, the Student Outreach and Transition Office was established, and they were established to support transfer, adult, and returning students. And with the growing number of students that were utilizing the post 9/11 GI Bill, there was a need. They saw a need for those students to be heavily supported or have some support because, if you're familiar with military, the GI Bill, or just anything that military and veteran students go through, there's a lot of details and a lot of nuances, a lot of things that they would need support in. So those students fell under this umbrella, under this office, to have that support. So with that growing support, we began to we realized the need to start recognizing their credit and giving them the credit hours that, or not giving them, sorry, more than just the credit hours. So we established a long time ago that any military student that completed basic training would get 9 hours of credit. So they get 6 hours of credit in military science. And I missed that. It's military science leadership courses specifically, and then 3 credit hours in physical education courses. Obviously, they had some physical education experience, and then military science leadership. So we wanted to make sure that they had those, that recognition. And at the time, we no longer have this as a requirement, but at the time, physical education was a general education requirement at EKU. So they were able to use some of their military credits in order to satisfy degree requirements. We established a series of initiatives. It was Operation Veteran Success. So this series of initiatives, I'm going to switch here. Here's a list of some of the initiatives. They were built to help support military students even further. So as you can see there, some of the things are no admissions fees for undergrad vets, and in-state tuition for out-of-state veterans, maximum credit hours for military experience, priority registration, book vouchers, books for the Boots Exchange Library, various things. And then I do want to mention the Veteran Studies minor. It was believed to be the nation's first minor, and it was developed to help students who weren't veterans or military service people to better understand the issues and things that veterans had to face. So there were a lot of moving parts, a lot of working processes, trying to get to a point where we could very well, serve our military students and support them any way we could. So with all of these initiatives and just the success in these initiatives, we were recognized by the Military Times Edge magazine and nationally ranked #1 in the Best for Vets survey in the magazine. And with that recognition in the Times Edge magazine, our number of military student enrollment just grew dramatically. And under the leadership of retired Lieutenant Colonel Brett Morris, who was at the time an associate director of the Student Outreach and Transition Office, was working with these students already, and being a military service person himself, he took that leadership and then developed the Office of Military and Veteran Affairs here at EKU. So they have a central location. They actually now have a lounge area. So they have an area with dedicated staff that's there and trained to help support them directly and give them the support that they need. So that's a little bit of the history of kind of where we started, and then what got us to the point where we are now, where we're actually evaluating their courses from the JSTs and then trying to give them credit that'll work towards their degree requirements. So with a process like this, it's going to involve a lot of people. So I kind of wanted to walk through the process and mention all of the offices that are involved. So we start with the student submitting the JST. It's really only recently been a requirement for our students to submit their JST with the upon admission to the university. So sorry. They're asked to submit those whenever they submit the application. Before, the students would just submit those whenever they wanted the credit evaluated. But we've recently added that requirement, or added, asked them for those transcripts. And that was for benefits purposes. The OMVA has to have those for benefits. And with that, we're seeing an uptick of those JSTs more than we've seen before, and more students that we have to record. And I also want to mention, if for some reason the student isn't able to send those transcripts to us, or if they're not able to, or whatever the circumstance is, the OMVA can actually request that on their behalf. Or if it's later determined that for their benefits they do need it, in fact, then the OMVA can request that. So once the JSTs arrive, they first go to the OMVA for review. They look through the transcripts, the JSTs, and they communicate to the registrar's office and let them know what records to record. The registrar's office receives those, records them into the system. We use Banner. And then our office, OATS, initiates the course articulation so that those can be evaluated for EKU credit. And then again, I know I'd already mentioned this, but I do have a note down there about the basic training credits. Every student that completes basic training gets 9 credit hours, 6 in the military science leadership, and then 3 in physical education. So this is the old way that we process this. The old way we process these credits. Now, I do want to mention first a couple of things that are true to the old way and the new way of processing it. So all equivalencies for military courses, since these are, and I know Josie mentioned ACE recommendations, since these are recommended, the JSTs have the ACE recommendations, and that's how we know how many credit hours and what courses to record, or what the suggested or the recommended credits are. We house them under the ACE institution code. So in our Banner system, they're all recorded, all the equivalencies are housed there. And then also students will receive CR credit, and at EKU, it's just credit. They get the credit hours for those courses, but it doesn't affect their GPA one way or the other. So that rings true for both ways of processing. So hope you can see my cursor here. So this is an example of a JST for Davy Jones Locker. So Davy, his occupation this is his occupation right here. All of this tells us what his occupation is. These circled areas are the recommended credits that ACE said this is what his experience could get him academic credit for. Here are the credit hours that they recommend, and they also recommend that these would be lower level courses. So at EKU, our lower level courses are 100 and 200 level, and then upper level courses are 300 and above. So what we would do is for military, we would just record, we would use 100 and 300. So 100 for lower, 300 for upper. So up here is an example of what these courses would look like. So this student's branch was Navy, and what we would do is the subject would be the Navy, whatever their branch is, and then the course number, because as we recorded these, we wanted to make sure we had, since we know these are lower level, the course number begins with that 1. And then because there's going to be so many different Navy subjects, we had to make sure that we differentiated the different courses. So we would really just go into our equivalency table, see the last number used, and then use the next one. So then we've got 1001, 1002. So the next course that we would record would be Navy 1003, 1004, 1005, and moving forward. And then this is an example of what it would look like once recorded. And this, like I said, we use Banner. So this is the transfer side, Navy 1001, 3 credit hours, the CR grade, the title. We'll skip past this. And then this course came over as EKU N100. And just so you know, an N is a placeholder at EKU when equivalent courses don't have an equivalency just yet. The N lets us know that those are courses that need to be evaluated for credit. And then here the credit hours they receive, the grade, and then the title. So that's how it would look in our old way. This, I mentioned that the OMVA would review the JSTs and then communicate with the records unit or communicate with the registrar's office to and let them know what credits to record. They would use, in the past, they used Excel. And this is an example of an old Excel sheet. We utilize Slate, and they actually utilize that for communicating now, but this is an example of what it would look like. So they would review the JST and they'd list all of the courses that the student will get credit for. So this is just one occupation, an example of this is from the JST. So this is an example of what they would see. And then, as you can see here, they've put down some courses for records at registrar to let them know what to record. I mentioned here that this is a case-by-case basis, and that's because there would be times where the, let's say, for example, this marksmanship course. One occupation may say marksmanship, another occupation may say experience in marksmanship. Well, essentially, they're the same course, but because the title's different, they're going to get two different transfer courses created in our system. So there was some muddied waters, just some duplicates made it difficult to make sure that all of these courses got evaluated. As you can see, there are just so many courses here that the registrar's office would have to record. It just took more time. So that was kind of some of the things that they were looking to fix whenever we moved to the new system. And then I got ahead of myself, but as you can see, so these are the courses that from the JST, they gave them. The branch was USMC, so US Marine Corps. They created, I know these right here look a little different than what I mentioned, but they would still be lower level. But they created the courses here, put the title, they got the credit hour. They would let the registrar's office know. I believe the blanks here meant that there were no equivalencies, not even a placeholder course. So they would have to create that placeholder course. So for these were probably already in the system. And then they would give them the dates attended. So that's all of the information that the registrar's office would need to know to be able to report these. So moving forward, looking back at some of the problematic areas that we wanted to fix, here's kind of how we did it. So again, here's an example of a JST. What we began doing, instead of recording each individual recommendation, we would use the ACE identifier. So each course would be the ACE identifier, and we would use MC, so that's Marine Corps. For the subject would be MC 2204, and the course is 0038 V2. So the reason we do that, so 2204, there could be MC 2204 0037, 0036. So there were variations there. So that's how we determined that to be the subject. And then one important thing to note is that version is very important. The version, there could be multiple 22040038 version 1, version 2, version 3. We wanted to make sure we indicated that version because in different versions, they could have different numbers of credit hours or different upper and lower level. There could be upper and lower level variations. So that was very important to make sure we indicated that. So we included that in the course number. So for this is basic training. So as you can see, that's the title there, 9 credit hours, because that's what we determined at EKU every student would get, and then the dates attended. And as you can see here, there's actually 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 credit hours recommended. Doesn't matter. We determined a long time ago, every student will get 9 hours. So we still make sure that we do that. And so this is just an example of what it looks like in Banner. As you can see here, this is in our equivalency table. Right here is the transfer course. And then down here, they have multiple equivalencies. So one of the cool initiatives with the new system is our Vets Ready Opportunity Portal. So what this does is it allows students to be able to search potential credits they can use their military occupations. So we do utilize tests. And if any of you are familiar with tests, we do have a public view of tests that students from any college, I'm so sorry, can go on the public view of tests, put in their transfer school, so like UK, University of Kentucky, and then if they're looking for English 101 to see what their English 101 or at University of Kentucky would be at EKU, they'd be able to determine that. So we do have that ability through tests. What's different about the Vets Ready Opportunity Portal is it's more front facing for military students. Since we record with those ACE identifiers, they may not know what the ACE identifiers are, and to be able to search those in our public view, but what they can do with the Vets Ready Opportunity Portal, and I'm going to try to go to this link here, is they can, if they certainly know what their occupation was and what their branch was, so they can just search that way. So let's say they were in the Army, they'll go down here and put their occupation. And then up here, they're going to put their rank and their training dates. And there, it tells them exactly what their credits have established, what their credits are, and what they're going to get with that experience.
Hey,
Audrey,
Audrey, I
I'm
just wanted to
sorry.
yeah,
Oh,
I'm
go
sorry.
ahead.
I was just going to let her know that we aren't.
We're having
You're
trouble
on
seeing your demo. All we see is your PowerPoint.
Okay, I'm so sorry. Well, I think, Lisa, do you mind to put the link to that?
I did.
Thank you so much. Okay, so that's my director, Lisa Cox. So Lisa put that link to our Vets Ready Opportunity Portal. So feel free to play along. But basically, all they need to know is everything that they would already know: their branch, their occupation, their and just the details of their occupation, and they'd be able to determine their credit hours. But feel free to play around and so you can see what that looks like. But it's just something that we were able to also post to our OMVA's webpage, which it's good because anytime they talk to a recruiter or an advisor, or anybody at EKU, and we find out that they're a military student or a veteran, we make sure that we send them to OMVA because that is where they're going to get the best support. So we make sure we send them that way. So they're very likely to see that on their webpage, and we would all direct them to that webpage so they can see those credits. I'm sorry the demo didn't work, but hopefully you all will be able to kind of play around with it. So some of the roadblocks that we have faced, and I think I kind of mentioned it in my introduction, as much as I love our process and where we came with it and how it had changed, there's still ways to improve. I think everybody in every circumstance, there's always room for growth. There's always ways to improve. So we've, recently, as I've come into this position, we're reviewing these processes again and reviewing our side of it, and then noticing just a few hiccups. So one of the things is multiple offices involved. Too many cooks in the kitchen. Too many cooks in the kitchen can spoil the broth. So multiple offices involved, and I'm not saying that they aren't necessary. So especially when this process first began, every single office that was involved was necessary. And I'm not saying that they're not necessary now, but there may be a way for us to reduce some of the hands involved and some of the processes, maybe we can automate some processes or ease some of the processes so that there's not as many hands involved and it takes less time for the students' work to get recorded, the more time that takes, it could either keep them from deciding to come to EKU. It could keep them from being able to get, and this isn't just for military credit, but getting financial aid, getting prerequisites. So the less processing time we can have for something, the better. And trying to eliminate some of the offices involved can help with that. Another roadblock was personnel changes. So in all three of the major offices that do these processes in the past 3 years or so has had personnel changes. And so with those personnel changes, it was very easy for some processes to get overlooked. And also, not all of them were documented. So that caused an issue as well. So personnel changes, undocumented processes, and then that leaves us with who owns this? Who's going to answer questions when we inevitably have questions? Who's gonna take ownership of that? So those some of the things that we've come across that we're working to try to think of new solutions. And I welcome and invite anyone here that have solved these problems at your institution. Please let me know. So some future innovations and some that we have already determined. The Vets Ready Opportunity Portal, that was an innovation with our new process that was great. It's wonderful for our students. And honestly, in my time in registrar and where I am now, there were a lot of times where we get a lot of phone calls, a lot of emails asking what credits they're going to get for their military work. And we didn't have a way to show them that. And now we have a resource to give them to see that. Another new thing that we've actually just learned about ourselves is the new ACE Military Guide Portal. And there's I think a lot of different things to utilize there. But one of the things that we're possibly going to look at is maybe there's a way for you to upload a JST to the portal and then be able to easily share that. So we would have to share that information whenever we're sending out to our multiple departments. For course evaluation, we're going to need to share that so they can see the course description. So this might be an easy way for us to share that information. Because I did forget to mention with the new process, because the evaluations, each ACE identifier has multiple evaluations, we aren't able to utilize tests and send each course out to multiple departments without creating multiple courses and tests, multiple evaluations for the same course. So we don't want to do that. So we're going to have to utilize email, but this might be something that, this is something we're going to look at to see if that kind of helps our process a little bit easier. Another thing is reducing redundant processes. So for us, I showed you the Excel, and it's now in Slate that OMVA sends to the registrar's office for recording. Well, now with our new system, since we're recording with ACE identifiers, that's something that we might be able to just record directly off the JST. And now that we require those at admission and they get uploaded to the student's record that we're able to view, that's an easy process, something that we wouldn't be able to do in the past. We weren't able to do in the past, but now we probably can. So that's going to reduce some of the processing time as well. And, with our office already recording transfer transcripts, that might be something that we can communicate with them in the future. And we're already going to need to be looking at these transcripts for equivalencies. Maybe that's something we can go ahead and record because we're going to be able to view that. Reducing the number of offices involved. We already talked about that. And then determining ownership. who can we ask questions to? Developing and maintaining proactive approach to credit evaluation. And this may be a pipe dream. We all know that as transcripts come in and we record transfer transcripts, and then we send those courses out for evaluation because those students are here, they need those credits now. That's already a huge undertaking. So taking a proactive approach would be wonderful because we already have all those courses ready for these military students, but it's finding the time, finding the resources, finding the people who have the time to do that. But that could be something that we could look at in the future. And then documenting all of the processes and house them in a central location. So for every office involved, making sure that all of their processes are documented and make sure they're all in one location. So there's no question where they are and there's no losing them if there were personnel changes in the future. So that is a look into our processes in the past, now, and then possibly the future. If anybody has any questions or any comments, my director, Lisa Cox, who was here for all the history that I talked about, she was here for that and experienced it. So if I don't know the answer, we're hoping that she does. But if you have any questions, let me know. And if there's any comments, please take the time now to discuss it.
Yeah, so as Audrey said, feel free to unmute yourselves and ask a question if you would like to. I think I saw at least one comment from Tony. Tony, if you don't mind unmuting yourself and asking it, or I think it was kind of a comment question, I feel like is what you put in there.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm Tony Rico from the University of Houston at Clear Lake, and I'm a military credit coordinator. We're here in the state of Texas. We have College Credit for Heroes, which is a workforce commission grant. And so I'm working on a grant to start these processes that basically you have been going through. And so I just started this in November, so brand new to all of this. So I'm looking for any type of workshops or conferences or focus groups, just anything military credit. But we are using the military credit guide, and we have started getting approvals for equivalencies for upper level credits towards our degree plans. But I'm hitting a roadblock with occupation exhibits. So they're wanting to see just course exhibits. They basically, the faculty are saying that we don't award academic credit for work experience. And so I'm getting roadblocks there. They're not understanding that they are getting the proper training in order to do the occupation. So what has been your experience with that?
That's a great question. Audrey,
would you like me to help you out a little? Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
We're just trying to tag team and help. Under our previous, we had a previous director of military and veterans affairs. Her name was Barbara Kent, and she was a former military member, and she was very, I must say, aggressive, assertive about going out, and beating down the doors at faculty members and having individual conversations. We have a very large nationally recognized College of Justice and Safety. This also includes military affairs with it. And so we have a lot of our service members who have occupations that are very relevant to, occupational safety, fire science, emergency medical care, all of those kinds of things. And so that was kind of, I think, probably one of the first places she started. So I think for you, Tony, thinking about how can you find those faculty advocates and those programs of distinction that are willing to maybe go out there, and then that might help to influence others in changing the way that they look at these kinds of credits.
Yes,
thank you,
thank
Lisa.
you. Yeah, the grant does ask for us to recruit faculty champions. So And typically those will be those who either know someone that served or had served previously to
Mhm.
help with that. But,
Yeah, that. Oh,
oh, go
sorry.
ahead. No, go
No,
ahead.
no, you're fine.
Just wanted to let you know about documentation. I played with Microsoft Teams approvals app and I created
Yeah.
a military credit or military educational evaluation form. And so what I do is send them the ACE ID and the military course ID. And they go to the military guide to look up the information, and then they respond back with an approval or denial, and they can make comments in that form. And then also all of that is recorded in Microsoft Teams, and you can export all of your information. So everything that you put in that template will export into Excel, any information that you designed the form for. So it's always going to be there. And then you can PDF the information as well. So just wanted to let you know that it's pretty awesome. And so we can forward that on to our registrar. They have access to it, and they
Mhm.
can see the military ID along with the course that it was sent over for the equivalency and whether it was approved or denied. So just thought I'd throw that
Okay.
in. So you don't have to double
Yeah.
entry any information, it's captured there.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much for that.
We had two questions come into the chat. I'll read the first one from Amanda Breslin. Does your university award transfer credit from two-year institutions that have already awarded prior learning credit?
That's a great question. That is, and Lisa, you might need to chime in on this as well, but that's something that we're actually looking at now. With at least with exam credit, and like AP credit, maybe being able to look at the transfer transcript and recording it directly from there rather than making the student wait just a little bit longer and jump through some hoops to send us their exam credits. But
Yeah.
any other credit for prior learning, I think that's where we're starting anyway.
Yeah, that is. And we just very recently had verbal approval for this. So we've not actually implemented it yet.
Right.
I feel like we're going to be able, if it's instances where some of those examples that Audrey gave, I also feel like if there is portfolio credit that's been awarded directly as a specific course that we already have an existing articulation for, then yes, we could record that and allow the student to have the credit for that. Now, if it's something like military credit that's been articulated, we're going to ask for the original source so that we can use the systems we have in place to be able to articulate that credit.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that. Let's see. Second question was, who maintains the equivalencies in the That's Ready portal, and can it pull from your Banner SIS system?
That is a very great question and something that I'm in the process of trying to figure out. That was actually in the personnel changes, one of the processes that kind of got dropped. The ownership was not established. So that's something that I'm looking into. And that's a great question. I'm going to look into that to see if it can communicate directly from Banner, because then they would automatically be processed. From what I've determined from my predecessor in this position, who was one of the, along with Barbara Kent, was the driving force to get this new system, new way of recording created. He said that it is a manual process, but I don't know if that's something that we can change. That's a great question. I'm hoping that it can be come from Banner.
Thank you. So kind of going along with what you just said, this might be a little bit of a uncomfortable question. You'll share what you're comfortable with, but it's always helpful to learn from mistakes. What would you say were some of the key things that you realized didn't get documented that you want to do a better job of documenting in the future when you talked about some of the things that got lost?
Yeah. Thank you. Yes. No, I don't mind talking about that. So like I just mentioned, the Vets Ready Opportunity Portal, we realized that those weren't getting implemented because we also realized that with the personnel changes and undocumented processes, the equivalencies weren't actually being reviewed, and that initiating process wasn't being carried out because with the new whenever the new system was built, the new recording system was built and created, the OMVA actually did take, or Barbara Kent personally did take a huge role in getting that started and initiating those evaluations. And then after personnel changes happened, we didn't realize that that had been broken. So that we are working on sort of, I don't want to say perfecting, but we want to get that process to a place where it's running smoothly, and we want to document it from like every step of the process to make sure that this doesn't happen in the future. And if somebody needs to make sure that to get this done, that it's going to be simple enough that they'd obviously have to know a little bit about the process, but they'd be able to sit down and work that and at least get the ball moving, instead of having that pause. Excuse me. So that was one of the things, was actually getting the courses initiated. And since that was heavily in the OMVA, our office had to look at the process and be like, okay, how does this need to be different from our regular transfer equivalencies? What do we need to do differently? How do we need to document this? So that's what we're working on, proposing and getting together.
So I think your last thing is a perfect segue into the question Tony just posted. She says, I am continually being asked for a syllabus before faculty will evaluate a military educational experience. How do we get them to understand all the background work done prior to ACE making the recommendations and accept that a subject matter expert has deemed the appropriate credit?
That's a great question. And that's actually something that I'm going to have to learn, and because I've been in this position a little over a year, but we are just finding these broken pieces and trying to get this going ourselves. So I'm still kind of in the learning process for this military credit evaluation, but so I'm not sure how it was done in the past, but as Lisa said, Barbara was knocking down doors and making sure that those things were getting done. So honestly, that's something that I'm looking at too. And I would love, if anybody wants to put their contact information here, if you want to email me, I've got my contact information listed here. If you want to forward me this question, and Tony, if you want to reach out to me, I will be happy to continue to work with you on this. And as I'm learning to share that with you. But that's a great question. And
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't have
Tony,
any
I'd like to
yet.
make just a general recommendation. I think that it almost probably has to come from academic affairs leadership. So it has to come from the top down. And once they understand, I think there's also opportunities for professional development. I don't know if you all have different faculty series, faculty professional development series that you might be able to actually get in front of those faculty members and talk about, the foundation of ACE, because ACE is important for not only military credits, but we're seeing a lot of students who are using Sophia and Straighterline and wanting to come in. And so, there's just different ways that those credits have been evaluated. And so we want our faculty to recognize ACE as a place where they can trust. And so that is a challenge, but once you get there, it can be pretty easy after that.
And I will say that
Yes,
I do
thank
see
you.
a comment also that from AACRAO, who works at Purdue Global and also has experience with military, that she recommended the ACE website. It has some resources that can demystify the process for ACE as well. And And then just, if you don't mind me adding my own input, I've also heard a great recommendation from a very experienced person that sometimes it helps to think of ACE as another accreditor. So just like we look at Higher Learning Commission, WICHE, and all those other things when we're deciding if we're going to award credit or not, it helps to think of ACE like one of the, kind of like an accreditor in a way. They've got their, because they also have a rigorous process.
Absolutely. When I try to explain that to students or faculty and staff, specifically for Straighter Line or Sophia, that's the wording used. Is like, well, they're accredited through ACE. So yeah, that's a great way to think about it. And thank you for the recommendation. Would you say it was from Allegra? Thank you for that.
Okay, I'll
Thank you
have,
all for these great questions.
I've got one last question for you, and then we'll stop. We'll give you a break here. You talked with all the processes, so this is for you and Lisa. With everything that you guys did to get going, awarding military credit or credit for military learning, what would you say are some low-hanging fruit opportunities where someone can just get some fast, easy wins if they're just getting started?
I think probably looking for, are there particular majors that align with the military, with what a lot of the military occupations have? And then within that scene, if you can't find somebody who is your faculty champion and who's willing to sit down and really look at this. And, the thing is that while they might not even sometimes be able to award an exact equivalency to a particular course, just being able to get that subject matter prefix and then having the, either lower or upper division level, depending on the degree program, can be very helpful for a student. So, maybe it's baby steps, starting with getting them just to recognize that, hey, you can say this is a criminal justice course, or, this is emergency medical care type course. And so they at least get that prefix, can be the beginning to move in the direction of actually getting specific equivalencies established.
Yeah. Yeah, because in the meantime, they, at least at EKU, they could be a free elective with those prefixes. And further down the road, maybe the right person would see that and see that description and say, hey, let's put in a petition to try to get this, this credit so it'll satisfy this requirement.
Thank you. Those are some amazing answers. Thank you so much again for for presenting. We really appreciate the fact that you shared all the knowledge that you did. It's especially because it sounds like you kind of opened it up from the history to the now and all the speed bumps along the way, which is so great to see and learn from. So if anybody has additional questions that you think of later, again, you can contact Audrey or you can contact AACRAO and we'll get them to Audrey. If you don't mind, Audrey, I'll take over sharing for just the last housekeeping moments of the presentation. So everyone who came today, we really appreciate it. Before you leave for the day, just some two last things from the Transfer and Articulation Committee before you go. We're soliciting your feedback about the community of practice calls so far. And particularly, we'd like to hear from all of you what you're interested in hearing more about. Do you want to hear, or do we want to continue conversations about prior learning? Do we have more questions about military? We'd really like to hear people's feedback. So when we post this recording afterward in the slide deck that goes with it, there will be a link to our survey to give you an opportunity to tell us a little bit more about what you'd like to hear in the future. And there's also a QR code, because if you're lazy like me, you like to just pull your phone out and get started. And then the other thing we have here is that just like we invited Audrey to join us today to share her knowledge about awarding credit for military learning, we would like to extend that same invitation to other people. So we are putting an online form out there for anybody who might feel like they have something interesting to share that they're super proud of, that maybe has been done, and they'd like to share that information with the rest of us. Pretty much the idea is that nothing's off nothing's really off limits as long as it's transfer related. We might say, thanks for your submission. We've got something scheduled, but we'd love to get some volunteers because absolutely we all learn from each other. That's something that Audrey and I were just talking about before this started, is that transfer is huge and vast, and it continues to grow as higher education becomes sensitive to post-traditional students. And so we're all continuing to learn and learn from each other. So just a plug there that if you're interested in sharing some knowledge, we would love to have more people like you joining, like Audrey, who joined us today to share information. So that is everything for today. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming, and hope you guys all enjoy your 3-day weekend.